And we're back, and this is our final segment before we move on to our entertainment with the incredible mentalist, Larry Soffer. I only wish you'd been able to see the transition that took place because, getting on and off of these stools is no mean feat, especially in heels.
Not at all, Simon, not at all.
So almost a liability claim happening right here in the Santam office. But yes, I'm joined by Alicia Naransamy. She's our underwriting head in our SME, also known as digital area of the business. Welcome.
Thank you, Simon.
And of course, Anton is still here because we have claims in all of these areas. What we are going to be touching on in Alicia's portfolio, she does PI, liability, and even a little bit of cyber in this area. So we will be unpacking some of those issues. So please don't go away. There is a broad focus in this particular segment. Can we move on to the first slide? There we go. Alicia, this doesn't come from the survey.
No.
But I thought it would be a good idea just to set the context for our viewers. This is the makeup of SHA's SME portfolio. So it all goes through our digital platform,
Correct.
Right? 5,300 policies. Well done.
Thank you to the team.
But it is evident there that a large portion of that is PI followed by the general liability.
Absolutely.
Do you want to just kind of give us a little bit of background here?
Yes, I would love to. So when we sort of launched our digital initiative, we had three concerns in mind, Simon. So we had to look at the SME market, right? And it's often said that SMEs are the lifeblood of the South African economy.
Backbone.
Definitely. Yeah. And like South Africans, I'm sure we both agree that we operate in a rich diversity of culture and uniqueness. Yeah. So SMEs are unique in that factor as well, right? Yeah. One would agree. In that, you can't just give a standard public liability offering to an SME. You need to create a bespoke offering for them, one that sort of speaks to their wide range of exposures. Now, in the public liability offering, that's really what we did. So you can bolt on your directors and officers.
Like 28 covers.
There's 28 extensions,
policy.
Exactly. Yeah. It's amazing. So we had to create that uniqueness of product, but then we had two other concerns as well. One that spoke to how brokers effectively sell this cover. As you guys know, that SMEs tender. And in that light, you can't take 3 to 5 days to go out to a client. It needs to be quick, absolutely. Yeah. So our platform allows for a quote to go out between 3 to 5 minutes, as opposed to 3 to 5 days. And then lastly, one that plagued most of the underwriters at our office, the questions that plagued them was, what do I give my client in the construction industry? And if it's plaguing our underwriters, I'm sure clients and brokers themselves are often asking themselves that question. So the pocket underwriter itself actually has a functionality built in with a knowledge-based tool where one can go and actually unpack and say, I have a client in the construction industry. What exposures am I facing? And what cover do I actually give this client?
So it's not just about quoting and policy issuing.
Not at all.
So it's actually, let's say, mitigating a PI risk for the broker.
Absolutely.
As well.
One would go as far as saying that. Yeah. Absolutely.
You're doing a hard sell here. There's no survey, actually. We're just selling stuff.
5,300 policies to date, Simon. I really don't think it's a hard sell. I think we're doing a justice for the SME environment.
Yeah. Well done to you and your team. Let's have a look at what it means from a claims perspective. I just want to point out, we don't have the same level of data that we have in the other areas because this portfolio is still very new. I know you don't like it when I use the word immature.
I don't.
But it's still developing and it is long tail business. But in terms of claims frequency, these are the businesses that are presenting us with claims at the moment primarily. There are others, but most of the claims activity comes from here. We've got a session next week with Malcolm on the big PI, if you want to call it that. This is the baby PI. Anton, maybe you can just kind of chat about this. Engineers and architects, surprising in the SME space?
Not at all. I think, PI, the duties and responsibilities are the same. Might have a little, one-man show doing his own thing. It doesn't mean that the risks actually change at all. Maybe there are certain other permutations that's obviously different, but insofar as the claim volumes are concerned, it's not surprising at all. We're seeing exactly this on the PI side on the larger customers, So, and it's difficult because the engineer is always right in the middle of all of this. If something goes wrong,
Yeah.
If a design is done today and everything constructed tomorrow, if it falls apart in 3 days or 3 years, whatever, because of a design flaw, that's it. It just is what it is, you know, because that is exactly what causes most of these failures is a design flaw. On the architect side, it also has over the last couple of years evolved into them taking on more work, and I think we chatted about that in one of the previous sessions.
More work as in, like, not their normal design work
yes,
that they do.
correct. So additional type of duties. I know when I started in PI, architects earned 6% of the project value, and you knew that, so you could rate it and everything done, and they only designed. You know,
now they're managing
not
the
the
whole
case.
project.
now they,
end-to-end stuff.
and you know they contract to be the principal agent, and they become like a project manager that you know has to pull all the strings together.
Yes.
And sadly, you know, during that process, what we have seen, and I think it ties in with some of the liability matters on building contractors, you know, some of these smaller contracts, you know, one of the risks here is that some of the smaller contractors might not be around. And then the finger gets pointed straight back at the architect if the contractor messed it up in some other way. And, you know, it's just one of those difficult things. You know, you're the last man standing. And, you know, obviously sometimes we can defend it. Other times, you know, we end up paying. But, you know, it still costs money to even defend someone.
Yeah, you got quite a bit of frequency in some of the claims.
I do.
On the liability side. I mean, what's the story with landscapers? I mean, that it seems like a relatively green fields kind of
One would think so, right?
industry.
So due to the nature of landscapers, we saw
in a dad joke. Apologize.
with the nature of landscapers, Simon, we saw a lot of increase in quantum claims attributed to windscreen claims, which hiked the volumes there as well. I'm not sure.
Guys kind of cutting grass on the side of the road and
Next to the windscreen,
And sadly, they
that's the nature of risks for SMEs, though. I mean, that's what they want the insurance for.
But the sad part is that rock always gets the most expensive windshield or the biggest glass door.
The imported windshield from Germany or something like
I
that.
suppose
the one they
others
can't
we just,
source anymore.
So I suppose those are the ones that we see, you know, and the others get sorted out quickly. But
Alicia, you told me about a different challenge that you were having with the contractors, the building contractors, in terms of, and I think you mentioned it when you started talking, businesses are tendering for projects. I mean, what's the story there? I mean, building contractors maintaining their cover, cancelling it the next day?
Simon, cancelling the next day. It is unfortunate, and like I alluded to earlier, they are tendering for these contracts. So what we also see is that they increase the limit, and then, you know, forget about or take it out for like a few months and then decrease it because they want to drop their premium as well. Or they don't get the tender, they cancel the next day. But what they're failing to understand is that they are doing work for a host of other companies.
Not going away.
Not at all. And that's a concern. And I'll talk to the cancellations as well at depth in a few other slides. But we are seeing a lot of cancellations in the SME space. Yeah.
All right, let's chat about that then. This was quite worrying. I mean, I've got kids at university, and you don't want to be thinking about the fact that you might not be getting the best quality education. 66% of the professionals in the SME space said that they'd noted a drop in the standard of graduates. And then 53% said that they don't have any kind of mentorship program in place, which I guess might be expected if it's a small business.
It's an SME,
What's the impact of this on PI?
A huge impact, a huge exposure. You have a graduate that's coming in, as you can see on the right, 53% of them are not going into a hub. They're not getting the mentoring that they need. So they're going out, they're making decisions, they're making calls that exposes their PI without some type of or any form of proper oversight. And that's a concern. And like you've mentioned, yes, it's an SME, so they don't have that funds like a large corporate would.
There's no depth in the team.
There isn't. Yeah,
that is worrying. Okay, let's move on. Anton, I mean, this talks to your point you raised earlier about the architects. This year, 15% of the PI SMEs said that they took on work outside of their core functions. And I guess a lot of that's to do with surviving. Take what comes your way. And then 37% of professionals said that they don't actually have contracts with their clients. So it's done kind of on a handshake. Anton, let me start with you. How significant is that when it comes to claiming?
Yeah, well, you can't show a handshake to a judge. And needless to say, once something's gone sour, everything, disappears. And there's no way that you can prove exactly what was agreed, what wasn't agreed. And I think, especially in this sector, it's very difficult because you get appointed to do a specific thing. And then, once you go to trial, and once there's a summons and there's attorneys, and then there's the but you didn't type of argument. Should you have added this? Should you have added that? So someone just says, well, just quickly build me a little carport. Okay. And then at the end of the day, it says, well, shouldn't you have put something in for the water? Shouldn't you have done this? That's the concern. There's no contract
kind of
certainty.
Scope creep with no record of it.
Exactly.
Correct. And, normally, someone wanting something has this great expectation. The broker or the builder just wants to do his job, or the contractor just wants to do his job, get it and move to the next contract site. And then the client's unhappy. And it starts with small things. And I think that's what the problem is. If you don't have a contract, the small things can trigger, a little bit of a scuffle. And at the end of the day, now you're fighting a fight that, is dictated by what is best practice. Where you are asked to do this. You did exactly that. But now best practice says, well, you should have put drainage around it, you should have done that, but I never quoted for that. And that's the real reality of it, is if someone says to you, just quickly, then you say, let's just quickly write it down.
Let's just quickly draft a contract.
Yeah, and Simon, you've got their 15% took work that fell outside their core profession. We only see this at renewal. We don't see this change midterm.
If we even get to see it then.
If ever, we don't see this change midterm, and that's an exposure for the SME.
Look, I think just generally, and this is something for our brokers to think about. Often the premiums are quite low on these SME portfolios, certainly coming out of the pocket underwriter system. They've been set for that market.
Yeah. They're affordable.
Affordable, yes. I didn't want to use the word cheap. So you've got affordable premiums, but what you don't want to happen is as a broker or an intermediary to almost make the amount of time that you spend explaining the cover to the client to be in line with the premium.
Yeah.
It should be in line with your professional exposure and nothing to do with the premium. So if it means having an hour-long conversation about PI risk, that actually needs to happen. Otherwise, we're another PI claim to
Or
deal
you might
with.
hate me for this, but use the platform.
I won't hate you for that. And please use the platform to our brokers. All right. I think this is what you were talking about earlier, Alicia, when I jumped the gun on you, as I tend to do in these presentations. 71% of the respondents, this was actually across the liability and PI spectrum, said that they actually understood what long tail business was all about, and that it did influence their choice of insurer. You heard Gareth talking earlier, we've got 37 years of experience. Longevity is key when it comes to long tail business. Clients, they weren't all clients, so randomly selected, said that they understood that. But then in the same breath, 28% are saying they don't really have a clear understanding as to when they should be reporting a claim. Talk to this, Alicia.
Thanks. Yes. So 71% understand, but are they putting it into practice, Simon? Because what we see is that they cancel the policy. We assume, okay, fine, you're completely migrating to another insurer, you have some type of cover. They're not. They're coming back to us 3 months later, having lost that cover, having lost that retroactive date, which is key, especially in the PI sector. And then they're like, can we incept? Can we reinstate the cover? So understanding it, yes, it's promising, but what we're seeing in practicality is that it's not emanating through.
I guess you don't know what you don't know. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. And this obviously has an impact on those tender quotes, because that'll be happening quite often. Then, jumping in and out. All the time.
Yeah.
I think let's just move on here. We don't need to have a deep discussion about these issues. I think we saw some of this in Manisha's segment on the general liability, the corporate stuff. Here, a slightly lower percentage of businesses introducing new products. A third, reevaluating supply chains. Also a reduction in staff happening in the SME sector, as you would expect. And then we also had this other number which told us that a lot of them had reduced the office space or factory space they were renting. What does this mean from an exposure perspective or a risk elevation perspective?
Definitely elevates the risk, increases the exposure. If you think about it, the 39%, I think that emanates predominantly from the public liability line. And why I say that is because we did start seeing a lot of, and let's be honest, like I commend the SMEs for their agility, especially in the lockdown period, to sort of, reinvent themselves and produce something new. But that increases the exposure as well. One, if they haven't told the insurer about it, and Manisha did touch on it earlier as well, are you qualified? We did see a lot of manufacturing agents switch from what they were doing to selling masks and hand sanitizers, aptly so. And then the 33% that reevaluates its supply chain costs. Reevaluating the supply chain in itself is, notable, but what are you doing in terms of cutting costs? Are you cutting out a key part of that, production line that's pertinent to the entire product? And that's a concern.
Concrete with no sand.
For me, though, the 28% is concerning because you look at it and you're like, oh, it's 28% reduced their staff numbers, right? But 28% of an SME who has a staff complement of 50 people, that's 14 people down, Simon.
It's not like others can just pick up the slack.
Not at all. And then how do they go about reducing that staff count? Is an EPL exposure there as well?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
One needs
and
to
EPL is
consider.
included in your
Absolutely, yes,
and
it is.
PI.
Thanks for the upsell.
Yeah, pleasure. Always be closing.
Yeah, just from my side, I think the concern with that as well is that you've got reduced staff numbers, plus you have quite a large percentage that don't have mentorship programs and training, and so you can't even say in a year's time we're going to be
storm building up here.
Correct,
yeah,
correct.
Potentially.
That's exactly the one thing that jumped out at me was if you put those two together, all of a sudden you were faced with a situation with something's going to explode and something's going to go at some other stage.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
And I think the point here also, I'm just checking, I don't have a slide for it, but we also realized there wasn't a lot of contract certainty in this sector. We spoke about the professionals not having contracts, but in the general liability space also not getting proper contracts drafted. These guys are often not negotiating with whoever they're doing business with from a position of strength. It's an SME dealing with a big retailer or a bank or something like that, and they will not hesitate to litigate against these SMEs if things go wrong. So I think it's also an important
point. And they're desperate for the deals.
Yeah, you would, and in particularly coming out of the last 2 years, which have been very challenging for businesses.
But I think just in addition to that, Simon, what you will also find is, they're also not in a position of strength in their supply chain.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they're dependent on certain suppliers. So the supplier will contract out a liability
and just dictate
and
terms.
They are facing that in terms of the CPA at the forefront.
Yeah.
And that could potentially pose problems for them if we pick up the claim and they've destroyed our rights of recourse.
Yeah. But they should be having that conversation with their broker and with us.
Correct.
So that at least everybody's going in with their eyes open.
Yeah, because if you're aware of it, you can underwrite the risk and you can proceed with it. But I think in lots of these cases, those contracts come from the larger corporates or larger suppliers, whether it's international or local, and the small SME that we're dealing with, he just wants to do the deal. That's and we understand that, But I think it's just a communication issue. Let us know, because the last thing I want to do is try and say we're not paying this because of that. We really try and monitor, rejections, and we try and make sure that we do absolutely the right thing. So,
absolutely.
And it helps if it's been disclosed and underwritten, and then you can just do what we need to do.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so just wrapping up in the digital environment, you've just launched this new product, Alicia, doing for SMEs, cyber. So 30% of the SMEs we spoke to had already had a cyber attack.
Yeah.
Not all of them had insurance, unfortunately. 25% said they fell victim to phishing scams. Those are like fraudulent fund transfer
Yes,
schemes,
correct.
particularly in the PI
PI.
environment, attorneys,
Attorneys, yeah.
conveyancers, estate agents, that sort of thing. And then 64%, this to me just blew my mind. And we're going to be delving into cyber in a lot more detail at next week's session.
Yes.
But 64% of SMEs, even though they know that there have been attacks against SMEs, saying it won't happen to them. I mean,
It's shocking.
it's absolutely shocking. But we have work to do then as an industry.
Absolutely. It's a great picture that you have up there. Hey,
Yeah.
did you put that in deliberately? Because on one side you're like, the attack is there,
Yeah.
the phishing scams are there, but yet I still don't think it'll happen to me.
Yeah, it's happening to everyone else.
But not
It's
to me.
Not to me.
Because I'm.
It's like that boat
Yes.
cartoon coming back to Garrett's
That's so
thing.
true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's because they think they're small, they're too small. What would a hacker want with them? A hacker would want more focus on a corporate larger client or, an entity than focusing on my small little accounting firm on the side. But what they fail to realize is that if they can attack a few small entities or small to medium enterprises and be successful, then they've won, as opposed to attempting with the larger corporate and probably being unsuccessful. Another thing that I noticed within the SME sector is that they either opt for one or the other. Either I have a good IT security infrastructure and my IT team tell me that I'm comforted in that, or I take out the insurance policy. And it's not one or the other, Simon.
Yeah, it can't actually work like that.
No.
They've got to have a combo.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And especially with the phishing scams that we're seeing as well, and social engineering that's coming into play as
Let's
well.
talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, so the phishing is one issue, social engineering in the SME sector?
In the SME sector,
It's
believe it or
prevalent.
not, it's like psychological manipulation, not what your wives do to you. I'm kidding.
Mine would never.
Not yours.
My wife would never do that.
But it's psychological manipulation. And basically, one could actually acquire this information all online, right? So you, Simon, I know where you work. If I go to your LinkedIn.
Wait, this happened to me.
Really?
Yeah, no. I have to tell you this.
Oh my
story.
word, okay.
So when I moved from one role into another at SHA, so the company sent out an announcement on social media, and even in the newsletter. And I was getting, you get all those compliments and
Yes.
congratulations on LinkedIn, and I'm very active on social media, as you know. And I also received an email from someone that I didn't know, but it didn't strike me as strange because a lot of the congratulatory messages, I didn't really know these people, even though I was connected to them. And it was kind of like, congratulations on your new role. I'm attaching a gift voucher for you to attend something or buy something. I can't remember. And this was a Word document that was attached to the email. I was very suspicious of it, so I didn't actually open it, and I sent it to our phishing team. And it was actually a phishing attack. So there was malicious code in the Word document. And for me, that was just a great example of social engineering, because I would never open an email from someone that I don't know if it didn't have any context to my life, and it did.
Yeah.
So I was manipulated.
Sure.
Actually.
So and just a plain simple man like yourself.
A simple man, yes, like me. So yeah, I think it is good for them to have an awareness of it. Anton, I know you're not big on social media, and
I am
really
exceptionally small on social media.
Yes. But from a claims perspective, do you think that Twitter and other social media platforms have influenced things like class actions? Just to kind of wrap up.
Oh, Simon, definitely, without a doubt. I mean, we're dealing with a current matter where there were about 70 people that had certain things stolen from them in a certain way. Sorry, I can't get into the specifics. And the one lady started a WhatsApp group. That WhatsApp group is now where everything's happening. And so all the information is shared. This one says this happened. That one, I spoke to this adjuster and he said this, I spoke to the other insurer, so everything's right there.
Sure.
But insofar as larger platforms like, Twitter, Facebook, all of those are concerned, that's where people search. You've got, especially, in the US and to a certain degree in South Africa as well, the reference to ambulance chases, I think we all know what we're talking about. I think it's a bit of a nasty term, but still, it's the term that's out there, are no longer actually walking around handing out cards. They are monitoring social media.
Yeah, sorry you fell down the stairs.
Correct.
Give me a call.
Yeah, they check out the complaints, and one complaint, if someone sends out that complaint, there's always some, human nature is to prefer to stick to the negative side.
Yes.
And I'd say, oh no, I went to this shop and it was a wonderful experience.
Yes.
After someone else said, I walked around the corner and I fell,
Yes.
and I bumped my pinky toe, and my kid laughed at me, so now I want 2 million rand. But then it starts snowballing. So, and this is worldwide. I think, it's definitely, I can't see it ever not being a problem, but it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both, and Anton, especially you, for spending the last couple
Thank you
of
for
hours
having me.
on the virtual stage with me. Of course, Alicia, thank you.
So much.
Any closing remarks for you before we
Yes.
hand over to Larry to blow our minds?
Absolutely, I can't wait for that. But just some closing remarks from my end, especially coming off the cyber chat, is I often find a lot of brokers want to render advice on what type of firewall their clients need to have, what type of antivirus their clients need to have. And then on the other spectrum, I see brokers wanting not to render any advice and sort of lean back and say, I'm not ready to sort of sell cyber just yet. To the first broker, I say to you, just watch, because that may fall outside the ambit of the advice portion that you give, but rely on us, leverage off us. And also the brokers that are not comfortable yet with cyber, we are doing a session next week, but speak to us because we have a great SME product that's packaged for your clients. So get in contact with us.
Thanks, Alicia. Anton, last words.
I think, Simon, especially in this sector, anyone out there, make sure firstly you have contracts in place, if at all possible, but yes, do that. And I think secondly, the notification issue that we touched on earlier is, it's a bit of a problem in this area, because lots of the guys, 30% says they didn't know when to notify. The concern is, if you don't notify on time, we get prejudiced. Lots of the guys think, oh, you know what, I've known this guy for 10 years, I'll just quickly sort it out. There's not going to be a problem. Rather let us know, and then chatting to us, we decide how are we going to deal with it. If that first opportunity works and you can get rid of it, then great. But if you don't want to bring it to us a couple of months later, and everyone's not happy, summonses have landed, attorneys are involved, and no one's interested in talking. You don't want that. Get us involved from day one. It's our job to hold your hand through that process and to manage your risk. Not reputational risk, but your legal liability risk. And hopefully, if we get in soon enough, the one will be sorted out because of the other.
Thank you, Anton. And once again, thank you both.